Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who is extremely excited today to talk about the new album by Czarface and MF Doom. Super what? First thing I'm going to do is piss off the audience of this video. You see, most of the people watching this video are going to be what we could call hip-hop heads. These heads are really into underground hip-hop, its history, and the art form. How am I going to piss them off? By saying the following sentence. This is the first MF Doom project I have ever listened to. How is that possible? Well, I didn't pay attention to new music in between the years 2002 and 2018. So I just missed it. I just missed the whole train. And when he passed last year, it was sad, and a lot of people, wrote to me saying, are you going to do a retrospective? I know you're super into hip hop. And I am. But it felt inauthentic to me to do some kind of retrospective of an artist that I didn't know anything about. I talked about this a little bit with my son, who actually knows his work a little bit. But what he said was it's kind of hard to talk or learn about MF Doom because MF Doom fans are so hardcore that they just attack you for not knowing everything already. So feel free to blow up my comment section calling me an idiot. I love that. But I'm happy to have this be the project that introduces me to MF Doom. And I'll explain why in a second. When talking about Czarface, I was driving my daughter trying to get a vaccination yesterday, and I was explaining to her what this group was like, because she was liking it, She's kind of hit or miss on hip-hop, and she's like, this sounds good, I like it. I'm like, so these guys are basically like, they're sort of trying to make like 70s comic books in hip-hop form. They don't talk about rhyming. They don't talk about crime. They don't talk about money. They don't even really talk about politics. They are just cool guys making good raps. And she just said, that's good. We could use more of that. So, here I am. I'm talking to my son. I'm talking to my daughter about this. But I want to talk to another kid about this. I want to talk to a kid named Sky. I want to talk to myself when I was like 6 years old. Okay? Because I think this little kid right here might be the kid who's listening to this album now. You see this picture of me, okay? This is in suburban Boston, where I grew up. And you see behind me this cool Silver Surfer poster from like 1973. You see over here this awesome Shogun Godzilla. You see how the fist is missing? It's because you press the button and like the fist would go shooting. And so you just lose that for years at a time. And this kid right here is super happy and super excited, He loves all this stuff. Now, my brothers are older than me. They were born in the 60s, and I was born in the 70s, so I got all this stuff secondhand. And the stuff that I got was this cool, like comic books, like these behind me. Just comic books sitting around, old Star Wars toys, old Godzilla toys, and I didn't fully understand everything. I didn't totally get who these characters were or what they were. I'd watch the cartoons as well, the Saturday morning cartoons, and I liked it, but it wasn't super important for me to get everything, It's not the modern day nerd of having to understand, who Bruce Banner's cousin was and what they did on Planet XDX, It was just like this fun, light, exciting, artistic moment. And this was me enjoying that culture then. And when I listen to the new album, Czarface with MF Doom, I'm making that face. My wife tells me I still make that face. I can't recreate it now. And I'm not even really going to try. Actually, the lighting is kind of bad here. I don't usually move the camera. I'm just going to move, sorry, you can end the video if you want now. This is very unprofessional. I don't really like the lighting right here. So I'm just going to move the camera around. So, when I think about this album and how it makes me feel, it's like, it gives me that sort of moment of like looking through my brother's comic books when I was like 6 or 7 years old, that kind of excitement. So I thought, why not like think about this, right? Because the way that Czarface releases albums, they come out with comic books, the covers, they go by the pseudonym of Czarface. The whole thing is based around the idea, and it's all things that look like this. So I was trying to find the right comic book from my brother's collection. We just cleared out my dad's basement, his storage space, and found all these great comics they used to buy, for 10 cents, 25 cents on the rack. I don't think it's really like Spider-Man and Doc Ock. Maybe this is a little closer. We don't really have the cover on this one. Spider-Man and Dr. Doom. MF Doom is based partially on Dr. Doom. So, that's not a bad splash panel. but I don't think it's really that. I think where we're getting closer is something more like this. These kinds of anthology comic books, like Marvel's Greatest Comics, featuring the power of the Silver Surfer mixing up with the Thing. This is what this album is like. And come to think of it, it's a little bit what their previous album that I reviewed was like too, with Ghostface Killah. Although when I reviewed that album, I compared them, the metaphor that time was I compared them to the 1986 Boston Celtics. To the point, and it was good enough, it's one of my better videos, to the point where 7L actually like gave me the thumbs up and said it was a good point. You can watch that video up there. It's one of my better underground hip-hop videos. But I think that's what this feels like, where you're like reading these awesome superheroes, Inspector Deck, Esoteric, MF Doom getting together. I guess I should probably just stick with this one because these are the villains, Submariner and Dr. Doom. And this is actually probably a better comparison because Submariner is an underrated character, kind of an underground for the sort of people who know things a little bit deeper. And same thing with the members of Czarface. So that's where we are. It's a Marvel supervillain team-up of all these great artists making great art. And I think the best way to think about it is to think about each of the rappers as a character in this comic book. And each of their verses is like something that they do or a way that they're drawing, right? We can think of each of their verses as like a splash page, you know, like a cool page of them doing something awesome, right? So let's go through. First, let's start with the Rebel INS, Inspector Deck. So Czarface is an interesting group because it's a combination of a Boston rap group from the 90s, 7L and Esoteric, who worked together with Inspector Deck from the Wu-Tang Clan. Now, I talked a lot about this kid, right? But if you ever told me that Inspector Deck would still be making great music in 2020, if you told me that in 1997 when that kid was 20, I would have been pretty shocked as well. And I realized, or someone pointed out, that I often like make fun of Inspector Deck, and I don't mean to. I love Inspector Deck. I just use him as an example of a rapper whose cadence is not remarkable. He's just a straight spitter. He doesn't sound funny. He doesn't have a gimmick. He's just a straight spitter. And here's some praise. With the exception of Ghostface Killah, I think Inspector Deck is making the best and most interesting music out of the entire Wu-Tang Clan. So there you go. There's me praising him because he found a place to be. He found a place where his style, where his art can really live and really thrive. And he doesn't have to talk about anything that he talked about in Wu-Tang Clan. He gets to just be this kind of cool, nerdy dude. Which, of course, let's not forget, Wu-Tang Clan is based on being cool and nerdy. The second rhymer, I guess, is Esoteric, who, this is the thing. So I am a white guy from Boston. I'm a white middle-aged guy from Boston. So having MF Doom, this giant of rap, of underground rap, and Inspector Deck, one of the members of Wu-Tang Clan, and me saying that the best rapper on this whole project is some middle-aged white guy from Boston, if you didn't downvote me before, you're going to downvote me now. But I gotta say it, he steals the show. I don't want to say it. I want to say, listening to MF Doom for the first time, I realized that he is the best that's ever done it and all that. And I want to say, I appreciate Inspector Deck and he's the best. But if we just take it by what is it that these artists are doing, okay? They're making comic references. They're using lots of complicated rhyme schemes, including interior rhymes, very intelligent one-liners and punchlines. You go by those criteria, Esoteric is just running the field. It is unbelievable how good he is. There's I take notes, right? So I listen to the album all over the place, driving my kids, working out the gym, all that stuff. And whenever I don't have time to actually write down, I just write down little notes for myself to come back to. And I wrote, quote, Eso, like 10 times on this album because I keep wanting to talk about his verse. So I'm getting a little bit asthmatic. These comic books were not kept, they were kept in the mildew factory. So I'm gonna have a little sip of my coffee and just kind of. So Esoteric really does shine. But what's really nice is the addition of MF Doom. He isn't actually on this album that much. He's not even on every song. But every time he appears, he has this great kind of gravelly, gruff sound. which is really good. He's all those things I just said, the punchlines, the interior rhymes, hyper intelligent. He does all those things really well. But what's nice is how well he plays against the voice of Inspector Deck and Esoteric. But the star of the show probably is the Czarface, the producers of this. The production is just absolutely front and center throughout this entire album. Weird samples, really well-made samples, just everything is so well crafted, just constantly nerdy, constantly cool. Cartoon sounds, like what's funny is when I look at a comic book like this, right? Like when I see all the things that are happening in this comic book, I hear the cheesy sounds from the cartoons of like the Super Friends or whatever it is. Like that's what I hear when I see this artwork. And it seems to me that Czarface is able to elicit those sounds, and they're able to make their albums like visual and audio at the same time. So let me give you an example of what they sound like, okay? Let's go to the track Zarwin's Theory of People Getting Loose. I'll put a link to it up there. If you've never heard Czarface, this is a great place to start. Some of the best production on the album. It has this drum loop. I don't know if it's the same sample from the song Incarcerated Scarfaces by Ghostface Killah, but it's this, I'm sorry, by Raekwon. Okay, whatever. It's a wu-tang beat. I think, okay, now you can downvote me for making that mistake. But there's this like great drum sample where the hi-hat is hit super hard. Like really hard and really good. Matched with that are these insane vocal samples in the back, like this chorus and this individual singer as well. All the way throughout, the Czarface managed to do this thing where all the way throughout the album, where they use different dynamics and use different layers for different rappers. So they take away some for MS Doom's verse. And on Esoteric's verse, everything just changes completely. They have a great beat. They don't need to do it. But Esoteric goes so hard on this verse. I'm going to read a lot of it soon. He goes so hard on this verse. You can tell the producers were just like, we got to do something else. We got to put weird 70s dream sequence sounds and some scratching and change up the drum beat because Esoteric is just going hard, just, Godzilla just rampaging, it's great. So I'm going to read you a little bit of everybody's verse on this album because I think this is a good explanation of all their strengths. Inspector Deck, the sire, leave your eyes wider than suburban tires. Beautiful. Rebel the great, whatever it takes. No pressing the brakes you hate. You could never debate. I'm setting you straight. No cold measure. No scale could measure the weight. Bottom line, your head's on a plate, mate. And then someone in the background says, Czarface. Just like that rhythm, just to those words and interior rhymes. And again, it's not, okay, supervillain team up isn't some crazy thing where the meaning is so important. And this really changed the way people thought about comic narrative, like the boundaries of what you can know. This is just a good comic book I probably read when I was that age. It's just a cool thing about cool guys doing cool stuff and fighting and shooting lasers and swimming around and punching bad guys. That's what these verses are, and they're really good. Then we get my first ever MF Doom verse that I've ever particularly studied. And I think what it must be that people like about MF Doom, and please tell me if I'm wrong, is just the bizarreness of it. Like knowing that he's always in a mask, knowing that he has this larger-than-life personality, and then just the words that he chooses and the way that he delivers them. Metal mask, get harassed, say it's true, forget the past, bring your liquor, get the flask, tap your cigarette to ash. Feel it quicker, get to blast, this is sicker than this trash. Guard my ninjas, in the cash you begin to bet the stash. Chicken dinners up to task, toes pressing on your throat, wondering is this the end? Good question, you know who. On a better note, better than racketeering, selling dope, not obvious, resilient like bending down, get the soap. And then it ends with the Wilhelm scream, the famous sound that's been used in most science fiction movies since Star Wars popularized it. Ah! But just all those great and weird rhymes that sort of make sense and sort of don't. Guard my ninjas, in the cash. Like, what? You begin to bet the stash. Chicken dinners up to task. Like, it's basically just kind of weird beat poetry, right? I mean, it doesn't quite hold together, but I can see the value of it. And I love it as a spice, and I really should go back and listen to Mad Villainy and all his other stuff, because I bet it's all this interesting. Then we get to Esoteric's verse, which again, I'm sorry, this verse is amazing, okay? Hoodied up like a Jawa Utini, wrestled like a blue meanie. Okay, now here, this kid's favorite movie was Yellow Submarine by the Beatles. His second favorite movie was Star Wars. So the idea that we had Jawas and blue meanies in the same line is a bizarre world that we live in of these great kind of cultural references. My patient's wearing thin like I'm Radzikowski at arenas. So Radzikowski is a famous, very thin supermodel. Sorta Joaquin Phoenix remix of the Joker. Listen, it's bulimic, a demon. Like, the levels of this, like talking about like his patient's wearing thin, and then talking about a supermodel who's too thin, and then talking about Joaquin Joker and the Phoenix, and bulimic, and like rhyming bulimic and Phoenix, and he's just on another level. He just is. Later he says, I swear they all unique. I'm David Harbour meets a Marley beat, the way I get biz and give him Hellboy. So David Harbour played Hellboy, but David Harbour meets a Marley beat. So Marley Marl is the great top 3 hip-hop producers of all time. I'm serious. Marley Marl is amazing. And he produced a lot of Biz Marquis's early stuff. So the way I get the biz and give him Hellboy, David Harbour meets a Marley beat, like the amount of of comic book and movie and hip hop knowledge you have to have just to get through this verse. And then he makes a later verse saying, he just keeps going. And this is why they have to switch up the beat, I guess. But he talks about making you cry like Dog Adoption and Sarah McLachlan. Did you just rhyme McLachlan and adoption and talk about that I Will Remember You, that commercial for pet adoption by Sarah McLachlan? Unbelievable. And then they've got this great sample all the way throughout. There's great little voice samples that are just so... The thing that hip-hop can do better than any other form of music or anything is give you little clips of people saying things that you just say for the rest of your life. You know, I've got a formula, but I can't tell. I don't even remember what hip-hop album that's from. Maybe De La Soul? I don't know. I don't know where it's from. I have my whole brain is filled with these catalogs of little tiny lines that come from hip-hop. What you doing on my turf, punk? Like all these little lines that are just stuck in my head that are references from somewhere else. And this album is filled with those. To the point where I've listened to the album 5 times. And there's this one line where this kid says, I have no idea what he said, but I'm pretty sure it's awesome. I don't know what the quote's from. Please tell me on the comments if you know, but it's just great. And then it ends with its totally new sound and the scratch of the Wilhelm scream. So there you go, right? How much more do you need to know about this album? That was just one song going through all that. God damn, it is great. The whole album begins with a song called The King and I with DMC from Run DMC. Great sample sound, like these bells. Very funny lines from Esoteric. My head is like Shakespeare when he wrote King Lear. Protect your neck beard. Protect your neck beard is a combination of talking about people who have a neck beard, like an internet thing, and protect your neck, the wu-tang line, just great. And then DMC says 4 lines, and they fit perfectly within the theme of everything, you know? This is like a guest appearance, you know? This is a surprise appearance in the supervillain team-up, right? DMC in The Place to Be, Daryl makes comics just like Stan Lee, like Peter Parker, I Live in Queens, and like T'Challa, I Am a King. Very simple, very good. Then we get to the track Zarwin, which I already discussed. Then Mando Calrissian. Now, I am a Star Wars nerd. I'm not much of a comic book nerd. I like the title here. I love the interplay between Doom and Inspector Deck on this song in particular. It just goes so nicely. I think that this is the thing, and I was looking at this comic before I started the video. I think the way that MF Doom sounds is like this. Like the way on this beautiful splash page of some dude sitting in a chair. God damn, this is mildewy. I might sneeze. Okay. This dude sitting in a chair and just thinking and just being badass. It does sound like what it would sound like if this guy started busting rhymes. We hear that as well on the next track, Doom Unto Others. Amazing samples. People being like, we came. Grimy bass. And what's really cool here is just like, they keep on talking about dope, like music being good. D-O-P-E, I'm going to show you how. Don't you doom, D-O-P-E. And there's this great quote, it must be from some old wrestling thing. And he's hammered, on his tiptoes no less, and he's hammered. Again, the kind of line we could have over and over again. It ends with an action figure commercial, and they actually made an action figure for this album, or for their band, so it's not like a, oh, isn't this an interesting commentary? No, it just is what it is. Next track is called Jason and the Zargonauts. Very cool, funky beat, kind of a buzzy 80s cartoon sound again. Amazing Inspector Deck intro. And once again, I have to quote Esoteric. Quote Eso. I'm telling you, it's all over the place. Quote Eso. Quote Eso. I had to go back and cut and paste from Lyric Genius. Claiming you moving them bricks with killers and goons in your clique, but I saw you grooving in Lululemon and Zumba with chicks. And that's okay, but don't tell me you locked in with a Glock in both socks when you're really in hot spin. It's just great, right? Because he's like trying to make fun of this guy for pretending he's hard by saying he's actually doing Zumba with women, and he says, and that's okay, which I love, because of course it's okay. You don't have to be a gangster. But if you're not a gangster, if you're actually in Zumba class, don't pretend to be a gangster. I think he has a great line. People saying Eso getting gassed when I am at Eso getting gas. Just a simple play on words with his name and the name of the gas company, Eso. It's just great. Del the Homo Sapien makes a return here, which is great. One of the sort of very early pioneers of alternative hip-hop, who I liked very much, up until I realized I could not stand his misogyny. It was just too much. He has this song, Chicken Head. He's like, I want you dead. It's just like, whoa, hey, incel, take it easy. But he's great. I love his cadence. I love the way he raps, and he's got a lot of talent. So there's none of that misogyny here. That was like 30 years ago, so maybe I can give it up. Next track is called Breaking the Action. Really cool. It starts with an MF Doom as well. Has a real retro jazz, like it sounds like early 90s jazz hip hop, you know, like back when people used to make hip hop that sounded like jazz. Even some saxophone here. A great sample with Method Man talking about action. And like no one can say the word action like Method Man. Quote Eso. Again, quote Eso. This is one of my favorite verses from COVID. I wouldn't remotely care about you even if we in a Zoom meeting. That's just great. I wouldn't remotely care about you even if we're in a Zoom meeting. Like remote, Zoom, Esoteric. I am very happy that you are making rhymes. Let's be honest, these rappers just a boring mess. Sick of playing optimistic like I'm in Tom York's band. You lost your mystique and leaked on 4chan for your 4 fans. You're Oregon, not Portland. I mean, Optimistic is a song by Radiohead, so sick of playing optimistic like I'm in Tom York's band. Just great. And then rhyming Tom York's band with 4chan, I understand, you know, like my video about Aesop Rock is very popular, and I'm happy that I did it. And I know he gets a lot of respect as being like the guy who's capable of coming up with unexpected rhymes. But this, I mean, 4chan and Tom York's band, I think maybe the weird, you combine that with that thing about the Marley beats and Give 'em Hellboy. Esoteric, I mean, we don't have to put them together. They don't have to compete. But when it comes to like very, very complicated rhymes that are totally unexpected, there you go. This has perhaps the best flow from Inspector Deck. And I just once again want to say this. I love Inspector Deck. I own Inspector Deck's solo album, okay? So I bought it the day it came out. Back when albums came out on Tuesday, I went to Tower Records in Harvard Square and I bought the damn Inspector Deck album the day it came out. And this has some of his best flow ever, because like some of the music drops out and it's just the bass and the drums, and you can hear his flow and he has a little bit of the reggae sound. It's not that what he's saying is particularly great, but just his flow is so good right here. Then we get to the track A Name to the Face, which is just all samples of people not knowing how to say Czarface. Czarface. What is Czarface? People not knowing what they are, which is very cool. There's this guy with a wicked Boston accent. He walks out wearing my Czarface shirt. Says, "What's Czarface?" It's very funny. Then we get to the track, "This Is Canon Now." Now you want to talk about a goofy rap song. This is like, people don't talk about this too much, but in the very early days of hip hop, comic books were everywhere. I mean, like, people forget that, like, there's like an entire verse, I think it's even in Rapper's Delight, about Superman and his super sperm, and like there were so many verses in like the early 1980s about Superman. Why? Because all the kids who were making rap music saw the Superman movie in 1979. So comic book nerdery in hip-hop is not something new. I mean, Inspector Deck, as is quoted here, was one of the first people to do it in modern hip-hop. But still, this song is just so deep into, like, you actually have to know comic books. You can't just know the movies. You have to know comic books. You have to understand that. I get the sense that Esoteric is like a member of some kind of comic book message board, and he's like, I'm gonna write the song for all of us. But what's cool is the music goes along with it. It's like an 808 drum machine going on there. He references jacking Jack Kirby. Jack Kirby is the Marley Marl of comic book artists. I'm sorry. I'm so proud of that metaphor. I want to burst. Unfortunately, there's a very small Venn diagram of people who will understand why that metaphor works so well. Like a pioneer, not necessarily the first, but probably the best, and also the best at popularizing, and totally fundamental and way too overlooked. Damn it. Okay, I'm sorry. I can't help it. And he talks about pitching a Fantastic Four movie to Kevin Feige, which is like, that is such a comic book nerd thing to do, because there's never been a good Fantastic Four movie, and he talks about destroying all the old Fantastic Four movies, and he just desperately wants there to be a good Fantastic Four movie. And by the way, side note, there is no reason for there not to be a good Fantastic Four movie. They're good characters, they're interesting, they have arguably the coolest villain in all of comic books. Okay? How do they keep screwing it up? It's not clear. And then he just talks about like robbing all the superheroes, and it's great. Like, makes a reference to Deadpool robbing Deathstroke, which is like me as a DC nerd. I'm like, you know, and Daredevil robbed him blind. Really fun. It's the lightness of this album, right? It's, you know, it's the lightness of it. It's the lightness of these things, you know? This isn't the dark and gritty deathscape of Dark Knight Returns, and oh my God, it's the Human Torch racing the Silver Surfer and a missile in the middle of the sky. If you want that in hip hop, you want Czarface. Scissorface. You want Czarface. Then we get to the track So Strange, which is really led by MF Doom, which is nice because he wasn't even on the last track. Beautiful chorus that has the way it's sung about things being so strange. And I want to spend a little bit of time with MF Doom's verse here because it's so good. And I think it shows what it is about MF Doom that I've been missing. Where he basically finds a way, he finds rhymes that shouldn't exist. And this is something that, you know, Eminem is also well known for doing. Not that many rappers are that good at doing this. Making rhymes out of things that you don't think, like words that shouldn't rhyme. Paranormal weirdo, zero care hero, tinfoil to the back or side, De Niro. Getting type of Negro, send her back to zero. Simple figures cause the spirit's so cerebral. Dancing like Knievel, scared money feeble. Grow up here remaining weird, dancing around with evil. When the people was spelled with the atmosphere of your people. Potions and concoctions hot, a single sip is lethal. So the idea that zero and cerebral can rhyme. Those don't rhyme. There once was a man named Hero, and he was very cerebral. Okay? That doesn't rhyme at all. But with his cadence, with his voice, he's able to make it rhyme. With all these interesting interior rhymes and interior rhymes that, like, he doesn't do it the entire time, right? So if we go dancing like Knievel, scared money feeble, right? That's, you know, rhyme. But then he extends it out on the next verse. Grow up here remaining weird, dancing around with evil. So he's able to play with the words and get them to go and create not just bum ba bum bum ba bum bum ba bum bum ba bum, but like ba ba da ba da ba 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 da 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 ba, right? And he's able just to do that with these words, with rhyming hero and cerebral and Knievel. He's great. Maybe I will do an MF Doom thing sometime. Then a great verse from Esoteric about his kid being evil and cerebral. You know, I don't know why. I don't know why that's what this verse is about, but it's a good verse. Then the album ends with a song called Young World. Beautiful hi-hat sound, by the way, just to the producers of this album. Thank you for finding that hi-hat, this weird reverb. Very cool kind of bloopy bass, xylophone sounds, a really sick xylophone sample. The whole thing is based kind of on an old Slick Rick song about, hey, young world. And it's like a lesson to the kids. It's a little bit weird in the context of this album, which is just so light and doesn't really have a message other than just be awesome at hip-hop. But I like it. I mean, I like it because it seems to be to their kids, and that is part of what makes Czarface interesting, is they constantly sample their kids. I think at one point one of the kids is like Darth Vader, slash you with my laser, that kind of thing. You know, like they include their kids a lot. So I guess a lesson to children is fine. The part that I don't like is the lesson to young people, because I don't think there's a lot of like young people on the streets who are in danger of falling into a life of crime who are listening to this album. They might be listening to other hip-hop, but they're probably not listening to this. A good Star Wars reference here. Materialism was taking over when I was the size of Baby Yoda. And if we return to this kid, did I get it? If we return to this kid, you know, I am roughly the same age, you know, as these guys. And that's true. If you grew up in the 80s, you were growing up when materialism was taking over. Kind of odd to say, when I'm obviously so attached to my memories and my memorabilia. But there you go. It's an interesting thing about the relationship between materialism and spiritual emptiness that we must avoid. So there is my review of Czarface with MF Doom. I'm very happy as an introduction. And if you are an astute viewer, you will have noticed that Godzilla still doesn't have his fist. I have good news for you. My father found the fist in a different box than Godzilla was in. So I will put that on here, and I'm going to shoot it at the camera. Godzilla, show him where the camera is. I think I broke my phone. All right, there's the camera.